Hello and welcome back to Hindustan Astrology. I'm Katya, and in this episode of Celestial Satsang, Season 1, Episode 4, we have my dear friend Sandeep Sastry. Thank you so much for joining me, Sandeep ji.
Thanks a lot, Katya. I'm really glad to be here with you and your viewers. Really excited to speaking to you about the U.S. elections. Yeah.
Yeah, so Sandeep and I have been friends for about the past 4 years. We've taken several Jyotish classes together, especially during the pandemic when, everyone was at home and we were on Zoom studying together. And he has studied with several different people and has kind of come up with his own way of analyzing predictions, where he takes a little bit from this technique and a little bit from that technique, and he has come up with something that's really special. So today we're having him on to talk about his research in the recent US presidential election, where he did indeed, in fact, predict that Trump would win. And this is something that, all astrologers had an opinion about, right? And it's very interesting to see, what has transpired. However, first, let's get to know Sandeep a little bit. So, Sandeep, I know that you are from India and you come from a Hindu culture. So can you tell us about, where you're from in India, what your family's like, and what, led you getting into Jyotish?
Thanks, Katya. So I'm originally from Mumbai. I'm actually I was born in a Telugu Brahmin family in India, where we have a lot of Vedic traditions, and as children, we are exposed to a lot of religious activities, and one of Jyotish is one of the things which we get exposed because everybody has a horoscope. Get their birth time. So growing up, I knew about my star, that is my nakshatra, that is Jesta, and that's what was used for religious purpose. And then people just told me that you will end up going abroad. And we are three brothers, and we all ended up coming to the US. I've been here for the last 26 years. And time when once in a while I used to look at my chart and meet a few astrologers. But what really got me going was in 2020, July. I had a reading with one of the astrologers just for fun, and he told me, "Hey, you have a chart of a Jyotish." I just laughed it out of that time because I have a background in tech. I'm an MBA, worked in Silicon Valley for a while. And Jyotish was again, this was in my mind, it was entertainment because I was just getting predictions. So I knew the seriousness about it, but it was still not something as a profession. And one thing led to another, and this was in August. I think that's when we met in Simon's class. And and then it was Katya who told me that and I needed structure because I was doing YouTube astrology, learning from different YouTube channels and learning on from books. But I wanted some structure, and it was then Katya who told me that, hey, you should join the University of Vedic Astrology, and that provides structure. That is with Joni Petri. And I listened to Katya. One person who I need to listen to is Katya, because even my wife tells me if it's anything Katya says, it's right. There are other astrologers, but it's not. I'm not flattering Katya, but we have a lot of respect, and that was the right decision. And so I learned and I graduated from the University of Vedic Astrology. It took me 3 years. And in the meantime, over the last 1.5 years, it's been my learning has been very accelerated. I've been learning from different Jyotishis. I've learned from Simon Chokoisky. Mark Boney is a mentor, and Paul Manley is also a mentor. So, and I take courses for James Keller, some of the Indian astrologers. So it's just that whatever the universe is offering, and that's been my journey in Jyotish. And here I am. I just released my first book. If you asked me 4 years back that you'll be writing a book on Jyotish about US elections, I would have just laughed it off. But you never know where things take you. So thanks, Katya.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. It's all the pleasure is mine. I have to say though, you do have an engineering mind, right? And so you have that scientific analytical mind. And because of your background with your family in India, the concepts are easier, I think, and also the Sanskrit. And I think that is one of the reasons why a lot of Western astrologers don't study Jyotish is because Sanskrit is very intimidating and you have to learn a whole new language. And so that's not a hurdle that you really had to cross too much. So he, learned really fast. And just a little background about the presentation, when we first started looking at the charts in the spring, right? Well, about a year ago, I think we really started looking at the charts to see who was going to win. And my husband said something that was very poignant that I think is where a lot of astrologers got it wrong when they predicted that Kamala was going to win. Now, my husband has a scientific analytical mind as well. And he's not certified in Jyotish, but he sits here and he watches these videos with me. So he's familiar with a lot of this stuff, much more than he would like to admit. And we were looking at the chart of Kamala, which, we thought had a Gemini ascendant. Some people are saying that she actually has a Taurus ascendant, and that's very valid. However, one of the theories about who to see is going to win is to see the chart of the person and then line it up with the chart of the country, especially the Mahadasha or the planetary cycle that the country is in, right? And Kamala, with a Gemini ascendant, much more matched up to the United States chart. And my husband said, well, that is because she identifies more with Washington and the whole culture of Washington and the establishment, right? So, yes, her chart would, show that. However, Trump's doesn't, but it wasn't the thing that made him win. You see, he is against all of the establishment. So, of course, his chart is not going to line up with the US charts, you know, um, planetary cycle right now. And I think that's something that, you know, we really need to take into consideration. This is, the US birth chart is valid, but it is talking about the establishment um, as it is being played out in the country at the moment. And so I think that's something that a lot of people kind of missed. What were some of we're going to get into your presentation in a moment, but just give us a synopsis of what was really the defining thing that you said he's the one.
It so happened that, I in 2020, when the elections happened, and this was when J6 happened, the January 6th things happened, and, there was a lot of things. I'd seen, I was a rudimental astrologer at that time, and I'd predicted then, even after J6, that Trump has a phenomenal chart, and he has those nakshatras where, the personal planets, he's got ascendant in Makha, which is a royal star, ancestor star. And it's the lion, the symbology is the lion, that's in Leo. And then he's got J star moon, where he is again, the king, the deity is Indra, who's the god of gods. So some of the nakshatra manifestations, I said that he would definitely come back. And he has another nakshatra called Punarvasu, where he's got two planets, where there's Saturn and Venus. So this was something which I just felt. And this, I told my wife, and I think I shared that with you, and I shared it with quite a few people, that I believe that he's going to have a second term and he would come back in 2024. But then, at that time, it was really difficult with all that. He got impeached twice, and no one really believed it. And I just felt, there was a gut instinct, and I didn't have, this was a long overview, of nakshatras and not going into deeper. But I guess for me, I wrote an article in August about comparing both the charts, and that was published in Joni Petrie's News Insights. And that was when, and I was listening to a lot of astrologers, and a lot of my gurus had the contrarian view. They felt that Kamala Harris is definitely going to win. But sometimes when you have, as a Jyotish, you have your instinct, you have your respect for your gurus, of course. And then me as an engineer, I like to look at data, and I like to go more further, deeper into it. And that is where I started doing more research. And I think it was, I think in the last week of, and you also want to look at what the reality is in the ground. You just don't want to make a prediction and just stick by it. You need to see at polls what's going on. And I like to, I'm a data dog, as people would say. I like to take the data and see what is going on in reality, and also see what's the stars are coming. So I like to have a balanced view.
Mm-hmm.
And it was in the last week of the election time that on the day of the election, I was really confident in the morning. And in the first 1 week, I decided, I saw a few other factors which got me thinking more. And that's when I decided to, do further research on past elections. And that's a good segue of my research. Of what I did was I looked at 13 past presidents, and looked at their natal chart. And I also looked at it over 21 elections. So I had some really good data from all the astrological insights. And then I came up with a model, various factors. And then I've come up with this. So if you don't mind, I can start
Yeah,
the
let's go
presentation.
ahead and
I'll
start
give
the
you the rest.
presentation. Absolutely.
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay. So firstly, I like to dedicate it to all my gurus. I wouldn't be here if it was not for them. And then I would also like to special thanks for this research, the presidential elections research, to Katya for motivating me. She told me that, hey, I want to interview you. And that was when I was in the midst of writing a book. And I took it more seriously, and I decided to publish it. So thanks, Katya, and there are a few other friends like Sandeep Tyagi and Dheeraj Seth, and of course to my gurus. About myself, I did give a brief background. I have a technical background, and I'm a graduate from the University of Vedic Astrology. So today, the agenda, I just wanted to, I know many of your viewers are astrology buffs and enthusiasts, and not everybody knows about astrology when we get into the technicality of it. So I just have a slide about introduction of what the various houses are. And when we talk about astrology, how we make the deductions. And then I talk about why do we need an astrology model for determining the next U.S. president. And then I did some research, as I mentioned, and what are the key astrology factors. So I'm going to be discussing 5 factors. Once you have a model, I mean, the real way, like academic research is, you've come up with a hypothesis, you need to test it and you need to validate it. So I've validated it over 5 elections over the last 25 years. And then after I've done the analysis, I have a discussion of the other additional factors which we need to look at while deciding who the next president is going to be. And then I also give a overview of the next, who are the Republican aspirants for the people who are aspiring to be the 2028 candidates. That's for the Republican and Democratic Party. So this is the plan. Katya, is that fine?
Yeah, looks great.
Yeah. Okay. The first slide. So this is about astrology. So many of us, at least the first time when I had astrology reading, I knew about what sun signs is. I knew various houses. There are 12 signs, but there is houses, there's signs. It can sometimes get confusing. So this is just a brief introduction. So in Vedic astrology and in even Western astrology, there are 12 houses for the 12 signs, and each house has a representation of one life facet. Like the first house is about yourself, the second house is about income, third house is about courage, siblings. Fourth house is about mother. So the houses which are really important are the houses when you're looking for a presidential election are basically the 10th house of career. The 11th house is very important for the gains. It's the elevation and the prizes which you get. The prize which you get is the becoming the president or the leader of a country. And then the 5th house is important because it's again got to do with Raja, the seat of the power structure. So 5th house is considered. And then 6th house of competition because your 6th house needs to be strong. So these are the various four houses which are very important. And that is something which I'll be talking about in the various factors. Katya, would like to add anything about this?
No, looks great.
Thank you. So why an astrology model? So as I said, what was happening was this was the first prediction I made, and I made this prediction in August and presented my research. And I didn't make it too public at that time because I just wanted to see what it is. And, it's your first prediction, so you want to keep a low profile. But then I kept looking at other astrologers and looking at their theses of why they were making predictions for Kamala Harris. And this was more from a learning perspective. And everybody had something, as you alluded to, the USA chart and, the Tashas which they're running. And then some people talked about her Rahu Dasha. So I just wanted to realize that, hey, there needs to be some consistency. There needs to be some standardization. There is it can't be that astrology is a science and there are various factors, but one needs to go in depth into it. And then at the same time, I don't know whether you've heard of Alan Lichman, the person who's a historian, who's American historian who's predicted nearly until this present election, he had got 9 out of 10 right, and he has 13 factors, economic factors, which one he looks at, and then he got 9 right, and he had, in fact was predicting that Kamala Harris would win, and unfortunately he was wrong. So he's around 9 out of 11, which is still almost a 90% accuracy. So I thought that, hey, there should be something in astrology. And that's when my endeavor happened for researching the 13 US presidents. And I basically used the reliable birth times because, it's garbage in, garbage out. And these presidents, this is from FDR onwards over the last 100 years, who've got a AA rating, which is definitely something which is very important for making astrology calculations. So I convert around 21 elections. So I determined that there were 5 key astrological factors. And so here you go. Here are the factors. Okay. The very first factor is you have to be running a favorable Vimshotri Dasha and Antar Dasha. And this those two, the Dasha planet and the Dasha Bhukti, they need to be connected to the 10th house or the 10th Lord from the Lagna. So this is something which is very important. And I looked at it in 21 or in the 21 elections. All the presidents were running election, were running a dasha, that is our Antar Dasha, that is the Vimshotri Dasha, which had a connection to the 10th house or 10th Lord. And in some cases, 1 or 2, it was the 7th Lord, the Bhavat Bhavam concept of, the 10th from the 10th. But there was only one election where there was no connection and the person became the president. This was Richard Nixon in 1972. This was in his Mercury Dasha, and that had no connection at all. And what happened there? I mean, he didn't complete the term, so it was not meant to be. But then this is research for 20 or 21 elections. I found that, the Dasha and the Antar Dasha needs to be connected to the 10th house and 10th Lord. Then the second thing, this is another system called the Gemini system, like how you have the Parashara, Rishi Parashara, who has his own system, which is primarily what Vedic astrology is. There is also one of his disciples his son's disciple, says Gemini, who has come up with another system. It's a 7-planet system, and they have Atmakaraka, Amatyakaraka, Putrakaraka, and that's relative to a few houses. Not many people know about this, but generally the Atmakaraka is the soul purpose, what the soul is for. That is the highest degree of a planet. And the Amartya Karaka has got to do with the work. And then Tuputra Karaka is the house. As I said, it's the Rajya, the state. So Raja Yogas, people who have presidents, this is all 13 of them. And this I've seen in various leaders. They always have these major Raja Yogas where the AK, AMK, the AK, PK, or the fifth Lord. So these combinations, they have these Raja Yogas, these Gemini Raja Yogas. So that was a trend which I did find too. The third one was the double transit. So this is something which most astrologers look at what Jupiter and Saturn is doing in the sky. And what I noticed is that there was the aspect of Jupiter and Saturn either on the 10th house or the 10th lord, either from the Lagna or from the moon. And this is in all the 21 elections. And sometimes in both cases, both the candidates have this going for them. Like, so, for example, in the recent election for Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, both Jupiter and Saturn were aspecting their 10th house, 10th lord from both the moon and from the Lagna. So it was really close for both of them. So the transits were not a criteria it was kind of neutral for them. Then this was a question you talked about the natal planets. You talked about the dashas for with having a connection, the dasha which the USA is having with the respective candidate. So I did see. I saw trends that many past elections that the USA was running a different dasha, and and president who won had a different dasha. So I didn't see that many commonalities that I could say etched in stone that, hey, this is something working. But what I did see is that the natal planets of the president had a connection with the USA chart. That is the I beg your pardon, this is the July 4th, 1976 chart. So that is the snapshot of all the planets which were there on that day. The natal chart, they have some connections. And so candidates who don't have connections don't become presidents. So I saw that in, two cases like Mitt Romney and in Hillary Clinton's case, though they've had so many positions, senators, governors, but then they didn't have, and I think Al Gore, that those are a few. I mean, so few people who definitely thought that they had a great natal chart, but they had no connection with the USA chart. And this is something which I did in the research, and I can highlight that later. And then this is one of my things which I'm really fascinated about is the last chart. It's the D60, the Sastyamsha chart. Not many people use this because this chart, the Lagna changes every 2 minutes, depending on the place where you're born, 1.5 to 2 minutes. And they generally use this chart for twins, because twins are born at two different times, very close to each other. But you can notice that two twins don't have the same life. They have different lives. And the D60 chart goes into the minutiae and more detail. And you can get some really very good insights. And I just recently got to know of a Gemini rule, which helps in birth time identification, which can confirm that the person has the correct birth time. And this has got to do, I mentioned that in the book, I mentioned about the rules. That is, the D60 planet, D60 chart deals with a lot of the past life. So the Lagna and the Lagna Lord, the Lagna or the Lagna Lord needs to have a connection with Ketu, which is Ketu is the Moksha Karaka and the past life Karaka. So there needs to be a connection, an aspect through the Gemini system. So this is something which I've been researching further, and I've got some really beautiful results. And this needs more research into, and which is my next endeavor, which I'm looking at. So these were the five factors which I came up with. Katya, this is a little bit in detail. Do you have any questions about this?
No, look, it's very clear.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So now here is the validation, the evaluation, the validation of the model. So I looked at the last five elections. Donald Trump, of course, has been in the last three elections because he's fought three elections. And then two other elections. One was Barack Obama versus Mitt Romney. That election, and the one election which was very close was the George Bush versus Al Gore. And so I thought that these were the five good elections. The birth data all seemed to be correct. And I validated this, my model. And let me talk about this. Any questions, Katya?
Nope, doing good.
Okay. So the 2024 election, Trump versus Harris. So I've not put charts here because I wanted to be cognizant about the audience. So I just wanted to keep it, present the information in an easy way. So I have these five factors which I spoke about. So in the left-hand side, you have these five factors which you have. And for the reason, I go more in depth in the book. But for our purposes, I'm going to talk about what was the favorability which I saw. So one thing which I saw in this election, which was really key, the dasha which they were running. So I'm going to be speaking to this. Trump was running the Jupiter-Venus dasha. So the Jupiter-Venus dasha definitely has a connection between the 10th house and 10th lord, because Jupiter is in the second house in Virgo for Trump, and it aspects his 10th house. And Venus is basically the 10th lord. So Venus, Jupiter both have a 10th house connection. But in case of Kamala Harris, she was running Rahu, Venus. Rahu is on the ascendant, but it's not connected to the 10th house Jupiter. And Venus is actually in the fifth house. It's in the third house, which is in a parivartana with the fifth house. But there is no connection, Parashara connection with Jupiter, the 10th lord, which is in the 12th house. So this was something which got me thinking that, hey, this is something which she doesn't have. So this was one factor. But then another factor, so the favorability between the two goes to Trump because he has the 10th lord, 10th house connection. The next is the Gemini Raja Yoga. This is something which I looked at from FDR onwards, and everybody had AK, PK, as I mentioned, AK, AMK Raja Yoga or AK fifth lord. Everybody had had this Raja Yoga either in the D1 chart or in the D9. As you know, the D9 chart is an important chart, is like the fruit of the tree. If D1 is the branch, D9 is the fruit of the tree. So if either these yogas exist in the D1 chart or in the D9 chart, they definitely have a potential to become a president. So in Trump's case, he has the AK, AMK in the D9. But Kamala Harris has a AMK PK. So AMK has got to do with work, PK has got to do with government. So she had the AMK PK yoga which is a Raja Yoga, in the D1 and the D9, but then she didn't have the AK element to it. An AK element is the sole purpose. So if you really want to be the president of the United States or any major country, your sole purpose has to kind of win. And Kamala Harris just didn't have it. She definitely became VP. She was the senator. She was the attorney general. Had a lot of 30 years of government service, which kind of definitely helped. But to be the leader of a country or a nation or a governor, you need to have the AK, PK, or the AK, the sole purpose activated. And this was something which kind of got me thinking that, hey, this lady is good VP material, but she might not become the leader. In case of the double transit, as I said, both of them, it sufficed. The Jupiter, Saturn were looking at the 10th house, 10th lord, both from the Lagna and the moon. So those criteria were satisfied, so it's neutral. The planets connected with USA, Trump has many more planets, that is, he's got his planets, Jupiter, I believe, is connected. His Jupiter is at 24 degrees, which is very close to the Saturn at 24 degrees in the 10th house. So that is a very close connection. She has a Rahu, which is connected in Gemini with a few planets, but at a 3 or 4 degree off. But Trump has more. So I kind of gave the favorability to Trump. The D60 analysis, so Trump was running Jupiter Venus. And if you look at Trump's D60, uh, Jupiter is on the ascendant and Venus is in the fourth house. And it's in a 4-10 relationship. So that definitely was looking at the 10th house to look very favorable. Both planets definitely were connected with the 10th house. So that was a very positive. But in terms of Kamala Harris, she was running Rahu Venus. And in her D60 chart, Venus is debilitated. And it is the 10th Lord in her D60 because she's got Leo rising. So that definitely showed that, she might not win the election because the 10th Lord is debilitated. So this is how, I just went a little more detail for these ones. I know I'm not displaying the charts, but I wanted to be cognizant of your audience. But this is what the pattern is. And as you see, 4 out of 5 factors, the favorability goes to Trump. And that's how Trump became the US president based on these 4 factors. 4 out of 5 factors.
Excellent.
Can I go to the next one?
Yes, that transit of Jupiter in his 10th house. I mean, that was pretty telling because that was going right over his midheaven at the point of the election, correct?
Yeah, it was actually at the point of the election, it was at 25 degrees. I think his midheaven is in, it's at 2-3 degrees. Uranus was passing by, but the beauty of it is transiting Venus. So one thing which one looks at is whenever you're looking at elections, when you're running a particular dasha, you need to see what the dasha and the antardasha lord are doing. So where are they in the sky? So on that day, Venus was at around 28 degrees in Scorpio on Trump's moon. And Jupiter was around 25 degrees at, I believe it was retrograde. And it was around Trump's sun, on Trump's Rahu. I mean, very close to the Rahu and sun because he's got both of them. He's born in a lunar eclipse. So that kind of, and both the Venus, the other Antardasha and the Venus and Jupiter, both of them were aspecting each other, which was really big. So that kind of also plays into a role, and that gives more favorability for the transit because the Dasha lords are aspecting each other. But Rahu, Venus, I believe in the sky, Rahu was in Pisces and Venus was in, though there was a connection, but it was not an opposite connection. It was a one-way connection. Rahu was aspecting Venus in the sky, but Venus was not aspecting Rahu. But in Jupiter Venus, it's a direct mutual connection. So the one-way aspect is not as good as the two-way aspect of the mutual aspect between Jupiter and Venus. I'm getting technical here, but this is for your insights here.
Okay.
Okay. The next one. So this was the 2020 election. This was, of course, election. So this is, again, we're going to go based on the astrological basis of what it is strictly, or not whatever happened in the election. So I'm a student of astrology. I like to stick to the astrology. So in terms of the dashas, which Biden was running Jupiter Rahu dasha. And Jupiter is in his 9th house, exalted, which is Vargottama. Though it's retrograde, it's a very powerful Jupiter. So as soon as Jupiter Dasha started, he became the vice president of the United States. He became Obama's vice president. So the Jupiter Dasha, exalted Dasha, has given his results over the last 15, 17 years. I mean, throughout the Dasha. He was in Jupiter Rahu. Rahu is in the 10th house, and Rahu is a good place to be. The 10th house is a good place to be. So Jupiter Rahu was definitely a good dasha to be in, and he won the election because the ninth house was activated, the 10th house was activated. In case of Trump, his Jupiter, he was in Jupiter Saturn, but Saturn was in the 12th house, his 10th lord in the 12th house. So that kind of gave, though it is the 6th and 7th lord placed in the 12th, which is, Viparita Yaja Yoga, but it is still the 10th lord is going into the 12th. Saturn did give negative results. So Jupiter Saturn was not very favorable for him. So Biden kind of wins this hands down. In terms of the Gemini Raja Yogas, Biden has AK AMK Raja Yoga in his D1 and also in his D9. So he definitely is a classic politician, and he became a senator at age of 28. So he's been doing with working with the government, and he's never lost the Senate race, if I remember correctly. And then he became VP, and then he became president. So he's had that destiny to become the president. And, both the Raja Yogas in the D1 and D9. So again, the favorability goes to him. The double transit, Biden had both Jupiter and Saturn looking at his 10th house and 10th lord, because at that time, Jupiter was, I believe, in Sagittarius, and it was looking at his 10th house. And Saturn, I believe, was also in if I remember correctly, it was also in Sagittarius, and there was an aspect to that. Don't quote me on that, but there was definitely a connection. But in case of Trump, Jupiter didn't have an aspect on his 10th house, and that is why it was not very favorable. But in the 2016 election, Jupiter was in Virgo, looking at his 10th house, so that kind of was very favorable. But in 2020, it was not looking at his 10th house. So that was one factor which didn't pan out. So again, Biden wins that. Planets connected to both the USA chart, I think both of them have planets, the 5th lord, 10th lord connection. So this is kind of neutral. In case of D60 analysis, Biden's birth time is around an approximately birth time by 8:30, and it doesn't abide by that Ketu Gemini rule, which I was talking about. Probably you have to adjust this chart by 1 or 2 minutes. So for this research, I just wanted to go with perfect information of AA reading, and though it's an AA reading, I chose not to look at it.
Yeah,
Trump's
I
D60
agree.
is
I think that's wise because just so you know, guys, if you get a birth time that is exactly on the hour or on the half hour, chances are it's not correct. I mean, yes, there are people that are born at those times, but usually it's, so every 2 minutes those subcharts change. So that's why he didn't use it. Yeah.
perfect. The next election was, of course, this election was a big election because with all the scandal which happened, and you had the James Comey thing, and then you had the NBC news scandal, and it was very exciting. The outsider Trump coming in, and so what happened there? Because one thing you have to agree that astrology is still a science, and many people favored Hillary at that time. But one has to remember that Hillary never shared her birth time, her correct birth time. So a lot of people were assuming that she had a Scorpio Lagna, and the state, and she's born in Illinois, and it only just 2 years back we got to know Hillary Clinton's true birth time, because the state of Ohio, the state of Illinois, after a person reaches 75 years age, the state allows to release the birth time information. So every state has a different law. So in case of Ohio, where J.D. Vance and Vivek Ramaswamy are born, there are accurate birth times available because they were born in hospitals, and the state allows you to get that. So we're lucky that any Ohio-based president or any Ohio-based candidate, you get their birth times if it's recorded correctly. Mostly, you get that. So Hillary Clinton, most of the astrologers, they were using a wrong birth time, and that kind of gets the predictions go out of whack. But then finally, after using the correct birth time, I kind of did the analysis with the Taurus Lagna. So what we see here is with the dashas for the 10th house connections, Trump definitely had more favorable. In terms of Gemini Raj Yogas, as you can see, Hillary has a lot of AK, AMK, AK, PK. She was the first lady. And one of the research which I had done, which are not included among the 5 factors, is that the first ladies or the first spouse. I mean, in America, we have only first ladies. They also have very powerful charts. So I went to again till 1950. I went to FDR's wife from there. Whoever has accurate birth times, like Jill Biden has a very powerful chart. Hillary Clinton has a very powerful chart. Nancy Reagan has a very powerful chart. Jacqueline Kennedy has a powerful chart. I forget Roosevelt's wife's name, Eleanor Roosevelt, if I remember correctly. So she has a powerful chart. So there is support because they're going to be first ladies. So they also need to have the AK, AMK yogas. So this is something which are not included, but Hillary definitely has a powerful chart because she was a senator and then she was the first lady of a governor and as a president. So her Gemini Raj yogas are better than Trump. The double transit, of course, was again at that time in 2016 was favoring Trump than Hillary for the Taurus Lagna, if you look at. And then with the planets connections, I said that Trump definitely has the connection, as we've spoken before, but Hillary Clinton didn't have any connection. So this is something which is very surprising, because one would have thought, though being first lady, she would have had some connection with the USA chart, but I didn't see any planet within the 3-degree orb. And the D60 analysis, again, what I noticed is that Trump's D60 at that time, he was running Rahu Mars. And Rahu Mars was, Rahu was in the 4th house, the 410 axis. And Mars actually was, I believe in Virgo, which was aspecting the 10th house. So in the D60, Rahu Mars was aspecting the 10th house. But unfortunately, for Hillary Clinton, she had some, her 11th Lord, she has an exchange of 11th Lord, 12th Lord, which house of loss and elections. 11th Lord is also 6 from the 6th. So that created a 6-12 connection, generally creates loss in D60. So that kind of didn't help her. And I go into a lot of detail in the book. Any astrological lover and who understands it will definitely get to see all this data in the book if you get to see the book. So that is why if you see the factors here, 4 out of the 5 factors, Trump wins, and that's how he won the election. I've gone. How's the pace, Katya? I'm going into detail. Just let me know when I should stop. How's it going?
I just had a quick question. What is Hillary's Lagna Nakshatra?
I think it is, I'm not sure. I think it's Megashira, but if I can stop and look, if you want, I can let you know.
Sure. Yeah. Because I'm curious.
Sure. Just a minute.
Yeah.
So what we are looking here is at Hillary Clinton's chart. You can see this?
Yes.
So for this purpose, because I use the South Indian style, so I'll be using the South Indian. I know some of your viewers are North Indian, but for me, it's convenient in the South Indian way. So as you can see, Hillary Clinton is got a rising at, she's got a Rohini Nakshatra rising. And on the day of the election, if you see that, this was on November 16th, she had Ketu transiting her 10th house, that is Aquarius. So that is also not a very positive factor, because it's Ketu transiting in your 10th house kind of indicates some kind of loss. And that is more eminent with Ketu. So this is based on the transits. And I was talking about, the Parivartana between, this is a D60 chart. She's got a Parivartana between Jupiter and Saturn. So this is the 11th Lord and the 12th Lord. So as you can see, the 11th house is Bhavat Pabhavam is sixth from the sixth. So that is, generally for elections, your sixth house and your 11th house. Sixth house is of competition, 11th house is of gains, and the elevation, that is the reward. So that needs to be strong. So if there's 11-12 combination, so sometimes that kind of can give you a loss. So this definitely gave a loss here. So to illustrate the point, I just wanted to show that Donald Trump, when we were discussing this is his D60 chart. And when we said against Joe Biden, he was running Jupiter, Saturn. So if you see Jupiter, Saturn, it's in a 212 relationship. And you see that Saturn is the sixth lord, and it goes into a 12th house. So by the D60, looking at the D60, the Jupiter-Saturn, this 212 relationship, and Saturn going into the 12th house definitely shows a loss. But when he was looking at his Rahu-Mars, this was in 2016, you see Rahu is aspecting the 10th house, and Mars is aspecting the 10th house here again. So there is a 10th house connection, and that definitely is helpful. So the D60 chart is really a good chart, which you can get really good insights. If you see Jupiter has got Digbala, it's in the first house, and it is basically the fourth lord, and it is the seventh lord. So you see Venus is the fourth house, it's got Digbala again, and Rahu. So he's got huge properties. He's a real estate tycoon, which is looking at the 10th house. And he always lives in big houses. He's had multiple relationships because Mars is the eighth lord coming to the seventh. So a lot of the life events are explained. He's got the 10th lord in the fifth house. So, the 10th lord goes into the fifth house of Rajya. So that shows the, 5-10 connection, which also Biden has. So these things, the D60 is fascinating. If you have an accurate birth time, you can get to see a lot of life events. And now coming back to Kamala Harris, I mentioned that she was in Rahu Saturn. So if you see that, even because Kamala Harris, if you can see her birth time, she's, and I believe she's Gemini Lagna, because if you look at if you look at the D60, she got married in the Rahu Dasha. Rahu in 2014. That's when she got married, around 2014. And 2014, at that time, it running Rahu. So this the 11 axis, the once an axis is activated. And then she became a senator in Jupiter, Rahu Jupiter, which is really big. In Rahu Saturn, when she won when she lost, if you remember correctly, in December 2019, she was one of the Democratic nominations who withdrew first. And she was running Rahu Saturn. Saturn is the ninth lord and the eighth lord. So it definitely gave her the eighth lord effects. So Rahu Saturn, when she tried to contest the election, she didn't win. She, in fact, withdrew before the Iowa caucuses in December 2019. And then suddenly the Rahu kind of gave her an elevation in Rahu Mercury, in 2020 August. And would luck have it, when she was nominated as the VP in August 2020, transiting Rahu at that time was over her natal Rahu. So astrology really works, my friends, so I can, in September 2020, you can look at the, I don't want to go too much into the detail here, but I don't want to belabor the point. But, in September 2020, Rahu moved from around September 25th, if I remember correctly, Rahu moved from, and this is the true node which I'm talking about, it moved from Gemini to Taurus in 2020. So just when she got that elevation of VP out of nowhere. So I guess, so what I'm seeing, and I just opened the chart so that the visualization, it's helpful. Let me go back to the presentation. So what happened with Mitt Romney and Obama? So this was the 2012 election, and this was definitely quite close. But then there was also some kind of controversy even in that election. If you remember correctly, you had the Hurricane Sandy, and you remember that scene where Obama hugging Chris Christie, and of course the 47% which remark which the 47% of freeloaders, the video which came out, which definitely impacted Mitt Romney. So there was definitely the own share of the 2012 election, what was going on with the economy that was recovering. But what happens in the astrology part of it? So with types of the dasha lagna, so dashas would relate to 10th house, 10th lord. Definitely, Obama had a very good connection in this. And let's just pull the charts here. So this is Barack Obama's chart, and he was running the Saturn dasha. He had just started the Saturn dasha in 2012. This was in November. And as you can see, Barack Obama has a very good Sasha Yoga. He's born in 1961, when Jupiter and Saturn both were together. Though Jupiter is retrograde and Saturn is retrograde, these two planets have very good source of strength. Because if you look at the Navamsha, Saturn is our Gautama because it's an Uttarashada, and Uttarashada is a nakshatra of permanent victory. So that is also an important factor. And he's got a beautiful Sasha Yoga which gets activated. And he also has a Gauri Yoga, which is an important yoga. Not many people know about that. When you have an exalted moon and Jupiter aspecting it gets a lot of luck and is very good for leadership. So he was running a Saturn Dasha where he had a good Raja Yoga. And also at that time, if I look at the elections, the transits, the transits were in the sky. Saturn was basically exalted, if you can see that.
Mm-hmm.
And Jupiter was basically in his fifth house,
Mm-hmm.
retrograde. So if you take the retrograde aspect, it was looking at the 10th house, and Saturn was in the 10th house, for Capricorn Lagna. So he was running a really positive time. And getting back, when in case of Romney was also running a great dasha. He was running Sun Mercury. So if I just go back, scroll here, pardon me, Sun Mercury. And Sun and Mercury are actually in the 10th house. So one would expect, hey, this is pretty close. But if you observe Sun and Mercury is retrograde. And if you observe in the Navamsha, Mercury doesn't have any source of strength because it's not in its own house. And Sun, if you observe, is again in Gemini. So there is no really, though Sun has got big bala, they don't have, it doesn't have a relative, strength as compared to Obama's Saturn, which is activating the Sasha Yoga and also these other yogas which have been formed. Yeah. So as I explained, Obama has, Romney definitely has much more better Raja Yogas, as you can see in terms when compared to Obama, because Romney was the governor of Massachusetts. He's been the senator, and he had good executive experience. And he was a very strong candidate. Much older, he's probably 1947 born, and Obama was still younger. He's 1961 born. So Romney definitely has better Gemini yogas for the governor. So that's why, for government. So that is why I give the favorability to him. The double transit, as I showed, was very positive to Obama. And then in terms of planets which are connected to Obama, Obama definitely has planets here. So if I go back to my chart here, and if I go back to the USA chart, if I just pull the USA chart, See, if I look at Obama's chart, so the thing to illustrate the concept of having planets which are tied loosely with the 3-degree orb. So if you look at Obama has his Mercury and Sun, both of them in Cancer. If you look at the Gemini, if you look at Mercury and Rahu, they are also in Cancer for the USA chart. So they are in the 3-degree orb. And, there are a cluster of planets. There's a stellium here in Gemini. So if you look at Barack's chart, he has his Venus quite close there. So there is a very good common connection, a 3-degree orb connection between planets in the natal chart of the president and the natal chart of USA. But let's go to Mitt Romney. Mitt Romney has his Venus, which is Lagna Lord, which is around 15 degrees. So there is a connection. But if you look at the USA chart, the USA chart has got the natal Ketu of USA chart in Capricorn is around 15 degrees. And you look at Mitt Romney, his Lagna Lord is at 15 degrees in USA's Ketu. So though there is a connection, it is a Ketu connection. So, that is something which we need to research this even further. Does Ketu natally have the USA chart and people who have a planet close to Ketu, does that give a kind of a loss and they don't become president? So this is something which one needs to look at.
Right.
But as you can see, compared to the two, Barack definitely has more connections with the USA chart because he's got the Venus connection and he's got the Sun-Mercury connection also. So with this kind of helps. Okay. So now looking at the D60s, so at that time, the Saturn Dasha, Saturn is in the 4th house. In the D60, it is, aspecting the 10th house. So Saturn definitely in D60, Saturn is the first lord, which has gone into the 4th house and is directly aspecting the 10th house. So this is definitely a good Dasha in the D60 because, the 10th house is activated. In terms of Mitt Romney, is Saturn is Sun, he's in Sun Mercury. But if you see, Mercury is in the 3rd house. 3rd house can also be the 8th house from the 8th. So that can mean loss. Mercury is also here in the 12th house, and which is also not a very good house to be in. So, the Sun Mercury is not as powerful as the Saturn in the D60. And you see the malefic influence here. Mars is looking at the Dasha Lord. Mars is looking at Sun, and Saturn and Mars both are looking at the Antardasha and the Dasha Lords. So when malefics are looking at the Antardasha and the Dasha Lords, it's not a good time. You might not win. But, look at this for the Sastyamsha chart. Saturn is, looking at the 10th house. This is much better. So this definitely helps. So the D60 chart definitely helps here. So as we can see, I discussed both Obama's chart and I discussed Mitt Romney's chart. And as you can see, the various factors. So as I could show, you have Obama having 4 out of the 5 factors which are favoring him, and that's how he won the election. I beg your pardon. So now let's discuss this election. So if you can see the factors here, I mean, this is the last one. So if people are tired, of me going, I'm passionate about this, I can go on, but I know not everybody can. So I'll be quick here. So as you can see, Al Gore definitely had favorable, Dasha running. Though it was Rahu Saturn, it definitely was favorable. I'll go into the chart. In terms of Gemini Rajyogas, Bush definitely had the favorability. In terms of double transit, it was neutral. And in terms of planets connected to the USA chart, definitely was favorable for Bush. So George Bush was in 2000 was running Saturn Mars. So you can see, Saturn Mars was at the time of election, but the time when he took presidency, he was in Saturn Rahu, and Saturn Rahu definitely is a tough dasha. and he had to experience the 9/11 under his presidency during Saturn Rahu. So astrology does work, because Saturn Rahu was never a great, or Rahu Saturn definitely has challenges. Some people have good times, but there is some challenge because Rahu Saturn kind of exhibits things. So coming to the election, Saturn Mars. So Saturn is basically in the Lagna. So, directly Saturn has the aspect, the 10th aspect to the career. So that is definitely helpful. Mars is again, it's looking, Mars is in Purva Falguni nakshatra, and so there is a connection with Saturn Mars, so with the 10th house. I'm not exactly getting the Mars right this time. There definitely is the Saturn Mahadasha dot connection. I'm not able to see the connection with Mars right now. Mars is in the second house. Is it looking at the 10th lord by any chance? No, it's not looking at the 10th house, right?
No, but
Yeah,
Mars
sorry,
is the
10th is the
natural
10th lord.
ruler.
Mars is the 10th lord.
Mars,
Sorry, I beg your pardon. So
yeah.
Mars is the 10th lord. So, that's so simple. So sometimes when you're looking for the aspect, but Mars owns the 10th house. So there is a connection. So, of
In
course,
the fifth house,
so
in the
it's
fifth
very
house of
easy.
politics. So,
And it's a yoga karaka. So Mars is a yoga
that's
karaka.
right.
Saturn is in the second, looking at the 10th house. Look at our friend. Where's our friend Al Gore? Rahu is in the 10th house, and Saturn also is, they are born, 1946, 1948. So Saturn is in the same house, and then both of them are Cancer rising. So Rahu is in the 10th house, which is good for career at times, and then Saturn is looking at it. So this definitely looked as a very powerful. But then, if you notice, Saturn goes into its own house, which has a source of strength. And Rahu goes on the ascendant in the Navamsha. So that is why I kind of gave the more favorability dasha-wise for Al Gore. And then if you look at planets, Al Gore, there is no planet, though he has planets in Mars and Saturn in his first house. It's not in close proximity with the USA chart. It is at 3 degrees and Rahu 15 degrees. But Al Gore, 22 is still a 7-degree orb. And, there are no other, and he has planets here. Look at the USA chart. Doesn't have planets in this whole area. So one can see that you need to have a connection, and that Al Gore was not having. So that was one thing. The D60 charts, again, the Rahu Ketu rule, to explain that rule, the ascendant, the Lagna, Ketu, the dispositor of Ketu, dispositor of Ketu is Mars, and Venus, the dispositor. So Ketu, Mars, and Ketu need to be connected, but they are not connected. So if you considered he was born a minute earlier, probably, because those days, there were no computers to find out. But if he was born at 12:52, the ascendant would be along with Ketu, and this would be his correct D60. So if he was born between 12:52, in the earlier part of 12:52, there is a chance that there would be a connection. So that is something which, I didn't want to, rectify the time and play around with that. So that's why I didn't go with the D60. Both for Bush also, that criteria doesn't get sought, doesn't get, it doesn't abide by that rule. Now, for example, if I look at Donald Trump, I look at this D60, the rule which I was talking about, the Gemini aspect. Ketu is basically dispositor of Ketu is Mercury, and Mercury is basically the Lagna Lord. So there is a connection between the Lagna and Ketu, and that's how you look at the rule. So this rule is initially used the Gemini aspects. It's a little difficult if you're not very well versed with Gemini, but once you have a hang of it, this birth rectification technique definitely helps. So looking at these factors again, as I said, George Bush has two out of the five factors. I mean, two out of the four, which is 50%, which is much better. Though this is neutral, I definitely the election was too close to call based on the factors, but the Bush has the advantage because he has two than Al Gore's one. So as I said, there are additional factors which one needs to look at. And as I displayed, the strength of the Dasha planets. Like, for example, I talked about the Vargotama Jupiter for Biden, the Vargotama Saturn for Obama. So that definitely gives extra strength for the Dasha planets, and that needs to be looked at, and that is a big advantage. So that is not a factor, but these are additional factors who definitely build cases. The Dasha, Antardasha Lord transits. I talked about the Jupiter-Venus connection for Trump. Both of them mutually looking at each other. So that definitely was a positive thing. So that helps build the case. Impact of retrograde planets. This is something which one needs to do more research on. But retrograde planets which have a source of strength, like the Saturn of Obama and Jupiter, when they have Vargotama, so that definitely helps them. But Mercury, which was retrograde for our friend Romney, that didn't help. So that is something which one needs to look at. Retrograde planets, dasha, sometimes can be erratic. Nakshatras have that significance, as I mentioned, Jyeshta, Maga, Punarvasu. And even if you look at and then the vice president's charts, the vice president chart, if you look at J.D. Vance, I've not pulled that, but he definitely has a Maga rising, and he's got a few planets very similar to Donald Trump, and which is very positive. That helps too. There are other techniques like Varshafal. As the Varshafal, if you looked at Trump's Varshafal chart this time, and my guru Joni Petri made her prediction based on the Varshafal, it was definitely very favoring Trump because it was again ascendant, and all those planets in Jupiter and Taurus was in the 10th house during the time of his birthday. That's the solar return chart. So those charts definitely help. There are conditional dashas and other divisional charts. The Ashtavarga scores definitely was more positive for Trump. But these are, again, additional factors to kind of strengthen your case. So if I am looking at any other election, I would use my five. So for any election, I would use my five factors and also look at these additional factors to try and strengthen the case. And that's how I would, decide an election.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So now we are. So what is it going to be for 2028? And there is a suspense. You have Gavin Newsom. He's going to be a contender because the term limits of governor. I thought he would. He had a chance of the 2024 when Biden's health was not too good. But anyway, it was come last time, and so 28. It's Gavin Newsom. Then you have Gretchen Whitmer, Michigan governor, and she has a good chart, and then you've got AOC. She's got a terrific chart, and so these are the contenders. Then we have Pete Buttigieg. I beg your pardon. I'm not pronouncing his name right.
Yeah,
Pete
Buttigieg.
Buttigieg, pardon. Yeah, and then Jared Polis. And then Josh Shapiro. Josh Shapiro's chart is very difficult to get because very difficult to rectify. There's no information. And on that day, I think Saturn and Mars both were changing signs. So that is one tough rectification to be doing, if he has a chance. So there are other candidates, but, you don't have proper birth times. So this is something which, and who's there in the Democratic side? You've got J.D. Vance, you've got Vivek Ramaswamy. Their birth times are accurate, but then you've got Marco Rubio, you've got Ron DeSantis, then you've got Tulsi Gabbard. I mean, though she's become a Republican, and then you've got many more.
Yeah.
So in my book, I have definitely done the same analysis what I've done in the previous charts. And so this is my personal plugin. So you can get this book on Amazon, and you can either get your digital copy or your paperback. And I've priced it. If you have Kindle Unlimited, you can download it for free. And if you have to buy it, it's $6.95, and a paperback is around $20. So I've not gone into depth. It's just the incentive for people to buy the book. They'll get to see my analysis among the five candidates of who, based on those factors, who would definitely win. So I guess that's about it. Any questions, Katya? Yeah.
Gosh, that was wonderful. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I have a question about your Ayanamsha. I noticed you're using True Chitra instead of Lahiri. What is your reasoning for that?
So as an engineer, I like to go, and I'm a full moon boy. So
Uh,
I'm born on full moon. So I like, I like that perfection thing. And as an engineer, I said even that 1 or 2 minutes, let's use True Truth. And we live, I'll tell you, we are so lucky. We live in the age of computer softwares, do the heavy lifting. And even like some of our gurus, all Joni Petri and Mark Boney and many more, like Paul, people who are much older, different generation, they used to cast the horoscopes by hand, and
right.
so they have that definitely helps. But we
So,
are among the generation, so the software, the reason for the software, it's more accurate. And especially when I'm dealing with the D60, I want more accuracy of the birth time. So the D60, the True Chitta for D60, I see works much more better because
huh.
it's more accurate because of the lesser timing. And this is the Swiss Emirates, which is the exact time of where it is in the sky. So I think there is a 1 or 2 minute difference between the True Chitta. It's around 29 degrees in Spica, and there is I don't know the technical aspect, but it's a 1 or 2 minute, and so the degrees just matter by one based on the location. But I see good results with True Chitta, but Larry is good enough. So
Okay,
you can
so
stick
can
with it.
you explain to us the technical differences? Like what is True Chitra based on compared to
So
Lahiri?
True Chitta is, I think it's based on Spica. It's
Right?
uh, the star Spica, that's around 29 degrees. And so that is where it starts. So either you can take it at 0 degrees of Chitta Nakshatra, is, it's got two parts in Virgo and two parts in Libra. So
Right.
there is the one system. If I don't know, I think the Larry takes it at 29 degrees and the True Chitta takes it at 0 degrees. So I think there is a 1 degree. I don't know the real technical, but I think it's somewhere close between there.
But Spike
And
is at
there's
29 degrees Virgo now. It's not at zero
Virgo
Libra
and
anymore.
0 degrees. I think True Chitta is at 0 degrees Libra. I think that's where they're taking it.
But it's moved.
It's
I mean,
moved.
if
So
you're
that is where
basing it on the star, that because the stars move backwards 1 degree every 70 years. And so
Yeah, so there
Spica
is.
now is
I really don't know
technically at
the technicality,
29
but what I
Virgo.
what I know is that True Chitta is more the exact position of the sky at this very moment. So Larry, there is a slight difference. So the simple rationale is that the true position, True Chitta gives it right now what's happening in the sky. But Larry has a slight degree, and Larry was in 1954, and this is much more recent.
Okay.
There is more advancement. And Larry was a committee in 1955. They decided because when they had to decide and Larry himself was not an astronomer. He was the head of the committee because when India gained independence, you have all these various states which have various festivals. So our Prime Minister Nehru wanted to have one single Ayanamsha to decide the different states, the different festivals to declare holidays, bank
Mm,
holidays.
hmm.
So that's why there was a committee set up, and astrologers, astronomers both got together, and then they decided that. So even K.N. Rao, who's one of the greatest Jyotish, he uses Larry, but he does recommend that there is a change a little bit. But Larry using it doesn't make that big difference. But I'm a person who's looking at D60, and there are some other people well known. The person in Orissa, I forget his name. It might come to me later. A very renowned person in Orissa. He uses True Chitta. But again, you get great results in Larry. So I'm a stickler for, trying to use more precision. So don't buy me for that. Larry
Right,
is
right,
fine. We
right.
are not doing
Right.
great.
So, I mean, for beginners, we're calculating the ionamsha, and this is where the tilt or axis of the Earth, right, is analyzed compared to where it is upright at zero. Because upright at
Yeah.
zero is the tropical zodiac. That's how the sun's light hits the planet between the Tropic of Cancer, Tropic of Capricorn, determines the seasons, right? But we don't live on the sun, we live on the earth. So the way we view the night sky is very important, and that's the sidereal zodiac. So what we're calculating is that pi section from zero to where the tilt or axis in the earth actually is. And so what he's saying, because I use Lahiri, it's the most popular. It says we're at about 24.08, I think is where it's at. But true Chitra is at about 23 degrees. So it's just 1 degree back, very close. But you're saying that true Chitra is based upon where the star Spica actually is. And
Yeah.
Lahiri is based upon,
Larry is based on where Spica is, and True Chitta is, I think, at 0 degrees. It's somewhere there. I don't know. I've not done too much research on that. But
okay,
what reading I have done is, True Chitta is more accurate because it's based on where the sky is, the planets, based on NASA data today, where the planet is right now. So I go on that. So
right.
Larry is good. It's a 1955 thing, and I'm not saying that 1955 tools were not great and they were not. But for me, it is just a thing on True Chitta. I just use it. So it's just that
Okay.
I'm
Well,
comfortable using it. Yeah,
I'll have to change my settings and play with it
yeah,
and see
yeah.
what I
Because
think.
I'm using the D60 now, and since I'm a D60, things change in with a matter of seconds and minutes. So I'm trying to go more accurate because I'm getting good results with the D60, and that is why I'm sticking to True Chitta. But things
Hmm.
might change. The more charts I get, and I'm not. For me, I go on data. If this works for everybody, it works. Some people are getting great results with KP, so they're sticking to KP. Some people, there is one person who's created a software, Jagannath Hora. He used the Pusha as the nakshatra, and he gets results. So
Hmm.
there, as you know, astrologers don't agree with everything. But for me, it is like I just use rational common sense, and what works for me. I say, True Chitta, Larry, okay, fine. Everybody sticks to Larry, okay, but True Chitta, is it too big? I stick to, I make my own deduction. Will I go back to Larry? I don't know. But as of now, I'm with True Chitta, yeah. And my
Okay.
rational is more accuracy.
Okay.
But
I'll
this
have
is
to
the
play around
engineer
with
in
it
me.
and see.
This is the engineering in me. So this just and then there's, as I said, the full moon perfection, which is perfection is utopia, and that is my problem. I try to look for perfection, and I'm flawed also. There's never perfection there. So it is perfection is utopia. So by the accept what things the way they are. That's what I would say. Yeah.
All right, Sandeep. Well, thank you so much for enlightening us upon your research and congratulations on your new book. I'm so proud of you, and I'm sure it's going to bring you a lot of success. And, until next time, I'm sure, we'll have another discussion on here. But I just want to say thank you so much and namaste, Sandeep ji.
Thanks, Katya. And I'm really happy for you giving me the opportunity. And I'm also overwhelmed of what I've been seeing. Even my book on Amazon over the last 1 month, I've sold around 69 copies in
Wow.
50 different countries. And little did I know that such a thing would happen. And 52 are digital copies, 17 are paperbacks, and there was a digital promotion in between, but in the span of a month, probably 3 weeks, we've reached out to quite a few. So
That's
I'm
wonderful.
I'm really excited about it, and I'm learning too. So for me, it is the more you learn, and I like to share and also take data from other people too. So thanks for giving me this opportunity, and I'm really glad, and I hope your audience loves what they see. Thanks a
Yeah,
bunch.
you're most
Sincerely.
welcome. Yes. Okay. Until next time. See you later. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.